Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. Episode 8 of BDR Best Practices. This will be the last one of 2020. In a pretty sucky year, this has been a bright spot for me. So thanks for tuning in. On this episode, we're going to talk about objection handling. Being an SDR, you hear no so much more than you hear yes. But if you're able to flip a few of those no's into yeses, you'll be exceeding quota, making more money, and moving your career on faster than you thought. We kind of highlight the main objections we got. And we're pretty sure it's kind of, across all industries, these are the main objections you're going to hear. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Scott, who's freshly back from Portugal and back in the UK.
Nice. I thought you were going to go into a thank you speech to all of our fans out there for a moment. But anyways, the first of our competitors, first of our objections, like Jimmy mentioned, nice and broad. We work with competitor X or our budgets are tight. And I put these together because it's kind of like, hey, my hands are tied. I can't really talk to you. And we had a VP marketing come in at Reach Desk, and it was part of a training session. And I asked the question, hey, when people say we haven't got budget, how often is that an excuse? And his take was it is 90% of the time an excuse. Take that with a pinch of salt, but I think it's all about trying to get them to open up. It's the reasons why budgets are tight. Typically, we'll go with an approach kind of saying, hey, like we're the new kids on the block. We've got a bunch of fresh ideas. Does it make sense if you've got a competitor in place that you do a bit of homework and find out what else there is on the market? Should we share some ideas over lunch on us next week? That kind of approach. But then if you still get the no, trying to uncover what their priorities might be. Because then if you're able to find out, what it is they are trying to look after specifically, you can help that shape your messaging and then find out the timings, right? Budgets reset in March, contract renews in Q2. If you have a bunch of notes like that in your calendar, it makes a huge difference in your warm pipeline moving forward, kind of in the coming months in the new year.
Definitely. I know an objection that I get a lot, and I'm sure everyone else does, is, hey, I'm not the right person, or I'm not a decision maker here. Well, guess what? Now you got engagement, right? So maybe you go, whoever sends you that email, I'm not the right person. You look on their LinkedIn, find out a little about them. Hey, thanks for letting me know. By the way, saw you went to Alabama, like Roll Tide, or, great game last week, whatever kind of connection you could make. And then ask for that. Hey, do you mind introing me to the right person? Or, hey, do you mind telling me who is the right person? If they're not budging or you don't hear from them, reprospect the account. And then, based on, okay, so if this isn't the right person, I'd assume this person is. And let them know, hey, I already made contact with your colleague. They kind of pointed me in this direction. That's not a lie. They said, hey, I'm not the right person. Now you have engagement. Now it's no longer that much of a cold email because, hey, I'm really trying to do my homework. I've already made touch with your company. Based on what they told me, it makes sense to reach out to you. So if you get that objection and you handle it that way, you turn a really cold email into more of an intro email, and you're much more likely to get responses.
Nice. And I think using humor as well. Hey, like, I'm not a decision maker. Great. Well, I don't think I hope you weren't thinking I was calling you just to get sign off on the contract. Using a bit of humor to kind of work your way around that. Now, the world famous, I'm too busy. I'm just about to step into a meeting. I think we've all been questioning the truth of those kinds of statements when we hear them. But I think generally a good kind of formula to come back to that would be, hey, I appreciate you about to shoot off in 5 minutes. I don't plan to keep you long. How about I explain like why I chose to call you today for 30 seconds, and you can let me know whether it's even worth us following up and finding a time that's more convenient. Does that sound fair? And I think when you put it across in a sort of proposition style fashion like that, any rational person is going to, be in agreement. That's a pretty fair deal. 30 seconds while I've got you, hit them with a pitch or whatever it is you want to say. But then if you do grab an extra couple of minutes, again, trying to understand what their priorities are. Typically, we're prospecting people that are more senior than us. And so you can be like, hey, I'm speaking to lots of people like yourself, but to help with my understanding, what is it that really are your priorities going into the new year? Being quite vulnerable like that helps you uncover a couple of nuggets that, again, if you don't get the meeting in that brief window when you do catch them, it helps you shape your messaging for the follow-up that they ask for or kind of future messaging in general.
Being vulnerable to a prospect, that's so brave of you, Scott.
I know, I think it's a nice approach.
No, it definitely is. I was just busting your chops. So a lot of times, right, no one really likes getting cold called. Let's face it. An objection you're going to get if you make enough dials is, hey, how'd you get my number, right? And that's a little uncomfortable. And I know for me, when I get uncomfortable, I like to combat that with humor. So I'm like, hey, the internet, it's crazy. You can find anything these days. But then reassure them that, like, hey, I understand, right? There's an expression in retail that the consumer is always right. Well, that goes for prospecting. The prospect's always right as well. So let them know, hey, I totally understand. And if it makes you more comfortable, I'll make sure you don't get another call on this number. But while I do have you on the phone, and then you go into your pitch, right? Once you show that kind of compassion, you disarm them. They're going to be a lot more receptive for what you have to say. And you'll be able to make your pitch. And at that point, if you got a good pitch and you nail it, you'll get a good chance of getting the meeting.
Can you imagine having to go through yellow pages or having like an A4 sheet and have to get people's numbers like that? I don't envy our boss who had to do that one. Anyways, not interested. The timings aren't right. I think this is a tough one to deal with sometimes. But again, trying to understand why the times aren't right. Why aren't you interested right now? It might be that, hey, I've actually got a bunch of webinars going to be back to back for the next month. I really can't focus on anything else. And then, you can come back with it to say, hey, like, I actually noticed you got your December webinars that are running right now. How about we catch up in January when you've got a bit more time on your hands? But yeah, understanding the timelines on the projects that they're working towards, the underlying reasons as to why they might not be interested, with some kind of open-ended questioning. And then once they've opened up about a couple ideas, driving relevant value, using relevant projects to paint the picture for them as to specific reasons why they're going to get value out of a future conversation. One great way to do that, using information on competitors that you work with of theirs, case studies, and maybe some statistics to say, hey, some of our customers uplift their response rates by 600%. What would it mean if you could generate even half of that going into the new year? I think a couple of light bulbs go off in their head, and you never know, you might overcome a couple of objections. But that kind of wraps it up. Hopefully that was helpful. Couple ideas to implement going into the new year. We're going to come back with a new format for these sessions in the new year, which I'm excited to share. Going to be celebrating some real use cases of prospecting with a couple external people getting involved as well. But with that, I'll swing it back across to Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And I'll end it with this. If you're down because you're getting these responses, these are good, because the worst is when you just don't hear back, which happens a lot, right? And once you get these responses and you have engagement, make it happen, right? You got that engagement, the ball's in your court, see what you can do with it. With that, thanks for tuning in. I'm Scott, Scott, I'm Jimmy. Until next time.
It's been a long year. Till next time.